Thank you. I've just been informed that we are now live streaming, so I'll begin our meeting. Can I begin by setting out the meeting protocol? For the purposes of audio sound, I ask everyone, unless you're called to speak, to put your setting to mute so that everybody will be able to hear. Can I ask that mobile phones are turned to silent? And can I advise that part or all of this meeting may be recorded for future broadcast as well as being live streamed. Okay, first item then, the next item is apologies for absence. Everyone in Cabinet is present. Item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any in addition to those already in the paperwork for this evening's meeting? I'm taking that's no. Minutes of the previous meeting. Is someone prepared to move those as a true record? A hand up will be fine. Councillor Lloyd's moved them and Councillor Shepherd has seconded them. Are they agreed? No dissent there. Okay, they are then approved. Item 5, public consultation, and I will read through this. I have on item 6, Keith Kondaka. On item 7, Keith Kondaka and Christopher Wilson. Item 8, Keith Kondaka. Item 9, Keith Kondaka and I don't know, Chris Wilson, can you advise whether you wanted to speak on item 9? I'll ask him when we get to the item. Item 10, Keith Kondaka. Item 11, Christopher Wilson, and also a statement by Kyle Evans. At item 12, Councillor Wilson and Councillor Kondaka, and item 14, Councillor Kondaka and Councillor Wilson. I will come back if I've got that slightly wrong, but our main speakers today are Councillor Kondaka and Councillor Wilson on items as listed, and a statement on 11A from Councillor Evans to be read by an officer. Okay, then I'm going to take them in the order they're on the agenda because there are speakers on almost every item. So moving then to item 6, agenda item 6, General Fund, HRA and Capital Programme Outturn. This report sets out the final outturn position for the General Fund, HRA and capital programmes for 2019-20. The General Fund outturn position is an overspend of 336,000 against a budgeted surplus of 30,000. Key variances are shown at Appendix A. The main challenges for this year have been a significant increased demand for temporary accommodation, much of which cannot be recovered through subsidy, and higher recycling costs, in part due to a fall in prices for sale of recyclates. There was also an additional utility cost within community recreation, reduced rental income on commercial properties, and reduced income from summonses for council tax and non-domestic rates. The coronavirus pandemic at the end of the last financial year has also increased the shortfall of income on our car parks and market rents. These losses have been partly offset by increased green waste income, as the first year of the scheme was more successful than originally expected, savings from the new grounds maintenance contract, and salary savings from vacancies. As part of the final accounts process, the Council's earmarked reserves are reviewed to ensure that they remain at an acceptable and prudent level. The breakdown of the Council's reserves at the 31st of March is given at Section 4 and Appendix B. In summary, these are 7 million for revenue and 3.7 million for capital, and Cabinet are asked to approve these balances. The final outturn on the HRA for 1920 was a deficit of 5.4 million compared to a budget deficit of 5.9 million, an underspend of £454,000. This is in part from grounds maintenance savings from the new contract, reduced debt interest and vacancy savings. However, to ensure the safety of our tenants, there was the continued need for frequent, urgent fire safety services costing £565,000. These were financed from earmarked reserves, and further details are included at section 5.5 of the report. Further details on HRA variances for the year are given at Appendix 6. The HRA has a general balance of 6.8 million at the end of March, an additional 4.3 million in the major repairs reserve, which is ring-fenced for capital spend, and earmarked reserves of 4.5 million. These will be used to support the business plan in future years, particularly in relation to new builds and improvements to existing stock. A summary of the capital programme for the General Fund and HRA is given at Appendix D. There has been some slippage on the capital programme for the General Fund and HRA, and spend has been reprofiled into the following year. Cabinet are therefore asked to approve revised capital programmes for 2021 shown at Appendix E prior to submitting to Council. The regulations for completion of the annual statement of accounts would normally require councils to have a draft version prepared by the end of May, with audited accounts to be published by the end of July. However, for 2019-20, only these regulations were updated due to coronavirus. These updated regulations now require councils to have completed the draft accounts before the 31st of August and approve and publish the audited set of accounts by the end of November. The draft accounts for Nuneaton and Bedworth were published last week in advance of the revised deadline, and the external audit of our accounts is already underway. The recommendations to the report are shown at section 2. I do have, I believe, one speaker on this item. Councillor Kondaka, would you like to unmute and address the meeting?
Thank you very much, Chair. Firstly, can I thank Craig and Simone for all these wonderful figures. It's very useful to have them all laid out nicely. One of the first things that highlighted is the £500,000, £540 million to be exact, lack of income from the business rates. So that really is showing we're already struggling as a borough. Moving down, I also note we've got £125,000 underspend on the borough plan. We keep getting told we can't have a review of the borough plan because of the costs, and yet we've been underspending by £125,000 a year. The plan was supposed to have been already reviewed, and that money obviously should have been spent on giving us an up-to-date borough plan. Turning to fire safety, absolutely correct that we spend the money, both the revenue money on protecting our residents with fire wardens and the capital money on getting things correct and safe in future. I want to just check that the money has now been spent, and actually Reg Haddon Court and the Chimes are actually now up to fire standard with this £670,000. And then there's a few other smaller items, well, not necessarily that small, things like the Civic Hall. There's a report going to Audit Committee next week on some of the issues over bar stocks and things like that there. I do think we need to get the Civic Hall in good order. And then NABCEL, we notice it's almost £50,000 less income. For some time we've been worried about NABCEL, and I think we should actually have a comment as if that is going right or wrong. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Kondaka. Are there any points of clarification of Councillor Kondaka? Any member wish to pass comment on the report? Councillor Watkins.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Emails have already gone out to all councillors advising them that they will be getting an email to say that all the works are completed at various complexes across the borough. I don't believe Reg Haddon and the Chimes is finished yet, and so the security guards will be in there until it is considered safe to remove them. This has been explained on numerous
can I send a message to IT? We are ready for live streaming. Are we currently live streamed? Thank you. I am informed we are now live streamed. Can I apologise for the slight adjournment that we've just taken and go back to item 6. The recommendations in relation to item 6 are printed at page 15. I will formally move those again. Is that seconded? Seconded by Neil. Thank you, Neil. And are they agreed by the meeting? Yes, thank you for that. Then I will then turn to item 7, which is the submission of final business case to the Future High Streets Fund. This report outlines the work that has been undertaken to date to complete the final business case for the Future High Streets Fund and gives an overview of the content of the business case ahead of submission to government by the 31st of July. Section 3 of the report gives the background to the bid process and the timescales that the Cabinet has been working to. Section 4 then gives an overview of the projects being put forward for government support. These are the Abbey Street Leisure and Creative Project, the Bridge to Living Mixed Use Scheme involving residential, small business space and improved links to the park, early land assembly for the Transport Hub project and flood alleviation works across the town centre. The business case must include a range of options, including a do nothing, do maximum and preferred option. In total, the bid is requesting £23.1 million to complete these projects based on the do maximum option. And I'd like to recommend the recommendations as shown at section 2 of the report. I do have 2 speakers on this. I have Councillor Kondarka followed by Councillor Wilson. Councillor Kondarka, can I invite you to address the meeting, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. There's an awful lot of good stuff in this. The Abbey Street stuff has been overdue for years and years and years, so it's great to have the opportunity to get stuff funded. And I hope there's some early stuff we can do. Particularly, we've got tenants in the ground floor of the Art Deco part of the co-op now at the Queen's Road end, which is really good. And obviously, there's that massive sidewall that needs rendering, and there's lots of stuff we can start on the Abbey Street project. So the sooner we get some money, the better. The Bridge to Living project is really, really good. We do have an issue with the flood alleviation project because that will try and divert water from the Neaton Town Centre that comes down through the books through, I think it's sort of Camp Hill direction. It winds its way down, comes into the top end of Queen's Road, and eventually can provide a flood risk to parts of the Neaton. And the plan is to take the water along the canal and dump it downstream near Weddington. So it is really, really important that doesn't add to the flooding at Cleaver Gardens. It can be done so that doesn't happen. It can be taken further downstream, or we can have some ponds to hold the water between the canal and Weddington. But it's really important that's done well, because I don't want more flooding in Weddington. And the land assembly, it's really, really important that we work early with the current occupiers of sites to get them a new location in the Neaton Town Centre. I really, really don't want to lose Dunelm. It's one of the few key things in the area by the railway station. So if that's involved, we really do need to get them a new location in the Rote Walk or Abbey Gate, or we need to keep our businesses. So land assembly can't just be driven at the expense of who's there already. I still don't know what's happening to the land assembly at Vicarage Street in terms of the post office and the Wilkinsons. We do need to protect these businesses and these jobs in the regeneration process. So I really hope we progress carefully with these projects. I hope them the best of luck, but also want to make sure we don't have unintended consequences. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kondaka. Are there any points of clarification of Councillor Kondaka? I'm not seeing any. Can I then thank you, Councillor Kondaka? Can I come to Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to declare an interest in that I am on the Transforming Nuneaton working group, so just so that that's all above board. But yes, I really do welcome this report which is coming forward to Cabinet tonight and endorse it from the Conservative point of view. It is the government which is giving us the opportunity to bid for up to £25 million worth of works to Nuneaton Town Centre, and having this option scheme of lots, I believe we called them at the Transforming Nuneaton meetings, gives us an opportunity to put forward a range of options for government to hopefully take forward, ranging from just taking one of the items off the table to either a mixture, or hopefully I think we would all hope for all 5 of the lots which we are bidding for as part of this. So it's not just Abbey Street. I think we also need to give some consideration to what the other items which have been previously mentioned, because they haven't had as much airtime as Abbey Street, but they are equally as important. And the flood alleviation scheme could be the key to removing the town centre from the flood zones altogether and enable different types of businesses to come forward into the town centre, because obviously being in the flood zone heightens people's insurances, for example, and that can be a barrier to some businesses moving into the town centres. But also, what could be a real game changer for Nuneaton is the transport hub. So moving things like the bus stations and the taxis and the trains all into one central location could both enable more people to get into the town centre, a better way of getting out of the town centre, but also free us up to regenerate the old bus station area, which I know in its history has seen plenty of different uses, from a cattle market to its current use as a bus station. But these are really critical. So we have the opportunity of £23.15 million, and I fully endorse that from the Conservative point of view, and hope that the government will take on board the cross-party working and give us some funding to really get Transforming Nuneaton moving. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Are there any points of clarification? Can I thank you for your comments, Councillor Wilson? Councillor Phillips, you indicated.
Yeah, I did, and I can concur with Councillor Wilson. This cross-party working partnership is going well, and I just also fully endorse the excitement that the development that we can have in Nuneaton over the next 10 years is well worth it. It's time, and that's about it, Chair, really. I just endorse this project very much so. I also sit on the board, and it's been interesting and worthwhile, Chair. So basically, yes, I endorse this.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. I also sit on the cross-member board as declared on the declarations of interest. I've got Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Lloyd, can I just advise you're still muted?
One was going to do it. Yeah, I endorse it as well. At the end of the day, this is a scheme that's going to revitalise the whole of Nuneaton Town Centre and encourage people coming into shop. The transport hub all in one place is a fantastic idea. I'm just hoping that the COVID-19 situation doesn't hold up any decisions from government, because this is a time coming out of COVID-19 where we even more so need some good news for Nuneaton Town Centre to give local businesses and residents something to hope for and look forward to. So let's just hope it all goes through and it gets accepted by the government. Thank you.
Absolutely. These are exciting times for Nuneaton, in that we not only have the report in front of us today, but also the Towns Fund, where we can potentially have further monies invested in our town centre. These are exciting times, and I hope that we will receive support of government for all of the projects, which will really do such a lot to improve our town centre. I think before moving to the vote on this, though, I do need to place on record, in a very short period of time, the amount of work officers have been doing in regard to this report. Members will be aware we have a very small economic development team at the moment, and we are doing everything we can to increase that team. But I think Dawn Dawson, who isn't with us tonight, has done a tremendous amount of work on this project, and it would be remiss of me not to express our gratitude for that. I have no other speakers. I have moved the recommendations. Is that seconded?
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Phillips. Oh, Councillor Shepherd, were you coming in to talk on this, or were you trying to second it?
I was coming in to second it, Chair.
Thank you very much. Is everyone in favour of the recommendations as printed? I'm seeing unanimity on that. Thank you very much. That is item 7 approved. Item 8 is the Strategic Risk Register. Councillor Shepherd, did you want to introduce this, or shall I ask an officer to do so?
Sorry, Chair, I was having trouble with my mute button. I have got a briefing note that I'll just pass through. So, the Council's Strategic Risk Register is subject to quarterly review, and when significant changes are highlighted between reviews. The existing register is dated the 14th of January 2020, as the first quarter review at the end of March 2020 was suspended due to the Council addressing issues linked to the COVID-19 pandemic. Where significant changes are proposed, the register is required to be brought to Cabinet for approval per the Council's risk management policy and strategy. Although there have been some routine administration changes, renumbering, for example, 2 significant updates have been highlighted. Changes to reflect the Council's new organisational structure formally introduced on the 1st of June 2020, the requirement to introduce a significant risk promoted by the current COVID-19 pandemic, but addressing any pandemic. In order to assist the Cabinet in the review process, the proposed register shown in the report highlights all of the changes made to the existing register. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. I think there was an error in whose portfolio it was on the agenda, so our apologies for that. It does technically fall under Councillor Shepherd's remit. I do have one public speaker, Councillor Kondaka.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's a great pity this risk register has only just been updated now. It should be a real live document, and during this pandemic, it should really have been put in as a pandemic risk right on the 29th of January. Risk registers aren't backwards looking documents, they're forward looking documents, and should contain things that may happen no matter how unlikely, if there are actually serious consequences from them. The big risks we have in here, things like housing, which is risk 1, I think needs also breaking down, because we have a lot of people in rented accommodation and people with mortgages that may become homeless as a result of the pandemic or the economic downturn from Brexit or other reasons. So but it separates out. We have the homeless problem, which is getting considerably worse. We have people in vulnerable tenancies, but also we have the amount of housing we generally have in the borough, and we need to actually understand that demand may be reduced by all the things going on, and particularly the things that will then go on in Coventry as the university and the motor industry suffer. So I think this is a far more complicated than a single dimensional risk. And the final big thing is the risks to older people. We're not building the extra care homes, the sheltered housing. We've got the McCarthy and Stone, which is very high-end housing. But yeah, we're getting an older population, lots of turmoil at the moment, but we do need more housing for older people. And the borough plan is failing to actually segregate its housing demand into different categories, and it's that older generation which really we do need to be thinking about now to actually provide more housing for older people over the next 5 years. On some of the other risks, NABSAL is a key one because that's going to be hit by all sorts of things. We've already seen a £49,000 downturn in its income in the last year. And then the big risk that's not here is climate change, which really should have a massive risk category of its own, because we've missed out seeing the pandemic coming. We definitely can see the massive problems of the climate change coming, both in terms of flooding, food security, heat waves, and massive amount of stuff we need to do. So I really ask the committee put climate change on this risk register, and I don't know what's happened to the work of our climate change subcommittee, but that seems to have disappeared. But yeah, climate change is the next disaster coming down the road after Brexit, or maybe at the same time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any points of clarification? In that case, can I thank you for your comments, Councillor Kondaka? At this stage, can I bring in Simone? There was a point made, Simone, in regard to NABSAL and actually lost income. As chair of NABSAL, I do declare that interest. I believed it was actually quite economically vibrant at the moment, but I would appreciate your comments, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, actually, NABSAL's income, I don't believe, was actually down during 2019-20. The council, I think, has actually charged some extra costs into that cost centre, which I think may be what Councillor Kondaka is referring to. Clearly, NABSAL has been affected in some ways by the COVID pandemic, as the council has itself as well. So there are some pressures, but and NABSAL is not alone in feeling the pressures from COVID. In terms of occupancy rates, there has been some issues with the block of apartments on Trinity Court earlier on in 2019-20, but they are, I believe, all fully occupied now, and our void rates in general are quite low and within budget normally, and NABSAL Gas continues to provide a really good service and is on budget there as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Simone. I think it's really important that we get an accurate picture. I've got Councillor Watkins.
Yeah, thanks for that, Chair. Just to point out that Councillor Concourse says that we need to build more houses for homes for older people. We have got a number of homes or living accommodation in our shelter complexes within the borough that have not been occupied, and we're working on that. So I don't think it was actually right.
Anything else, Councillor Shepherd, you want to come back on in relation to this report?
No, thank you, Chair. Just obviously to thank the officers for the hard work they've been doing, certainly in regard to trying to keep as much information as up to date as they can in regard to the pandemic. If I can move the recommendation on page 64 at point 2. Thank you, Chair.
I'm happy to second that. Is that agreed? Yep, that's agreed by everyone, I believe. That brings us then on to item 9, the local plan review, and I'll call Councillor Phillips. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Chair. Basically, the purpose of the report in front of us was to update members of the progress since the last report in January 2020. And the recommendations which I think need endorsing tonight is that, subject to the publication of the revised government guidance, the revised local development scheme, which is a local plan, and a clear timetable for the review be reported to Cabinet by the end of September 2020, together with a first draft of the list of policies that will be suggested for review. And also, Chair, that the work through the Joint Committee on a sub-regional basis be endorsed, and the financial implications of abortive work be noted. So first of all, Chair, we're still waiting for government guidance on the standard model that we should use to review housing numbers. Our last review on housing numbers, to put it bluntly, was based on 2014. Although when we thought about using 2016 government figures, which would have showed a lesser housing requirement, the government said, no, we cannot use them. Now, we need to wait for a new standard model. We've been promised it a while, and no one, as I keep repeating, wants to review the housing numbers more than me and this council. I am fed up of being abused on social media, etc., etc. We have had a lot of misinformation. The local plan committee has been set up, and the committee agreed that the work through the joint committee on a sub-regional basis be endorsed and the financial implications of work be noted. Now, by financial implications, it basically means that some people or residents or councillors actually feel that we can go out, employ a consultant, which approximately the cost is £100,000, and review our own housing numbers. That is not the case, because that work could be abortive, it could be a complete waste of time, and as a cabinet member, and I'm sure other councillors would think, we're not going to spend £100,000 on some work that might not be required. The other thing is, the local plan committee chair was set up as the body to overview the local plan. It is okay, and it's fully within their jurisdiction, Chair, for internal or external OSPs to try to force the council to do X, Y, and Z. But really, the governing body is the local plan committee, and they fully endorse the recommendations put forward here in 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3. So I would move the recommendations, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. I do have a public speaker on this, Councillor Kondaka.
Thank you, Chair. It is absolutely not the public's fault that we've got this crazy target at the moment. The target should have been something like 7,000 homes over 20 years. We added about 4,000 for economic growth that hasn't happened. And then we foolishly took on another 4,000 from Coventry, which we had no sensible reason to do so. This Burkat plan is so bad that it is going to drive disaster on us. We have to get it right. And although it's a massive cost and massive mess to fix, we should be doing it. We shouldn't just be putting it off because it's too difficult to fix. It's like your house being on fire and you're saying, oh, it's quite difficult to put the fire out now, I'll wait. The problem's caused by having a plan for 15,000 when we've got a need for 7,000. We'll just accumulate and accumulate and accumulate. We'll get poor infrastructure or no infrastructure, half-built developments. And a couple of weeks ago, the ONS said their latest household projections, 7,300 households are going to be needed in the borough over those 20 years. Clearly, we cannot build twice that number. We can build a bit more because obviously if you overbuild, you can attract some people to move to Nuneaton who wouldn't otherwise do so. But the plan is clearly mad before we had COVID, and Coventry is really going to suffer from the impacts of the universities taking less foreign students and the changes to the motor industry and all the other industries based around Coventry. We are going to have a reality check. We are going to have to look at the numbers, and we should have an interim housing target whilst we do that. Having a target now to catch up on 9 years of under development as far as the plan is concerned will not work. We should be doing this now. I know it's a mess, but it's a mess of the Labour group's making for setting such a high target and such a crazy growth target. We're seeing from the business rate income, this town is not growing fast. I wish it were, and I hope we have more prosperity in future, but the housing target is based upon stupid economic growth. And the overspill from Coventry is happening. A few hundred families every year are moving from Coventry to Nuneaton, more than would otherwise do so, but not thousands and thousands and thousands. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any points of clarification of Councillor Kondaka? Councillor Phillips, was yours a point of clarification or just to indicate you want to join the debate?
I just wanted to join the debate, and Councillor Kondaka has always said that we don't need any more than 7,300. The inspector would disagree with him, the government would disagree with him, and I would hope that he would agree with me that the review is ongoing, and does he want to spend, that he doesn't want to spend approximately £100,000 on going it alone.
Councillor Kondaka, I think that was a point of clarification.
Yeah, we were 125,000 underspent last year. I think we do need to work with Coventry and North Warwickshire and actually try and split that money between us. But we fundamentally need a sane plan. Having a stupid plan will actually mean we have planning appeals and other things that will cost us more than 100,000. And like the GP surgery that's not getting built in Wellington, if our projections are wrong and we set a trigger point at a number we never get to, we never get the GP surgery built. So it's a disaster either way. Let's get the plan right.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kondaka. I then move to members of the Cabinet. Councillor Phillips.
Well, I will tend to go over what I've said many times. I remember, as you will, Chair, the first meeting in November 2000. What I'm going to say is people are saying we are not working towards reviewing the borough plan and housing numbers, etc. The borough plan is massive. I remember you and I going, and executives and planning officers going to North Warwickshire in November 2019, where there was a workshop on how to review plans going forward. There was another meeting due to be done in March and then one in June. For anyone to say that we are not reviewing this local plan is ridiculous. For anyone to say that we have not set up a local plan committee who endorsed the recommendations in front of you and then seem to go against it in council is ridiculous. This is ongoing, it's very, very difficult, and anyone that thinks numbers can be pulled out of the air for political spin is joking. We need more guidance from government, and that's what we're waiting for, and we will move on. We will move on, and it will be done. Thank you, Chair. Move the recommendations again.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. I do have Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Lloyd, can I advise to unmute yourself?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, it's been advised that a new standard method from government is required. We've got a drive from the government on build. When you look at the Camp Hill development that I know fairly well, the people that are moving in there are not just from Coventry, they're from all over the West Midlands. They're not just from Camp Hill or from Nuneaton, they're new people with new businesses moving into Camp Hill. And I know a number of people that have moved in there that brought new business with them. So it does add to the growth of the borough. Councillor Kondaka can't have it both ways. He's saying he's just admitted he wants to work with Coventry and Warwickshire. Well, I've got news for him. Coventry and Warwickshire are waiting for the same information that we're waiting for, a new standard method. And until they get that, we can't work with them. So we can't review the local plan because we have to review it as a region. If you read 3.45, and it's quite clear, it says guidance on the standard method is to be updated by the government shortly. In a ministerial statement in March 2020, the minister said, to that end, I'm announcing that we will review the formula for calculating local housing needs, taking a fresh approach, which means building more homes but encouraging greater building in urban areas. Build, build, build. That's the government's motto. That's what has been said by the Prime Minister to get us out of COVID-19. So I'm not, I can understand why the Conservatives are jumping to try and get a review through as soon as possible on 2014 figures, because they know what's coming. Are those figures going to go up? Now, I don't know, and I'm not going to guess. But with them saying build, 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 I have every confidence that the figures may go up within this region and within the Nuneaton and Bedworth. Is that what they're worried about? Because they're obviously worried about something. Now, at the end of the day, we do have to work with Coventry and Warwickshire on the housing figures. We do have to wait for the new standard method from government. And until that comes through, a lot of the work can go on behind the in the back of in the scenes. But at the end of the day, we need those revised housing figures. We need that formula to work to. We've referenced the local plan working party in the revision. It has been going on. It's just more Tory spin. It has been going on, and it's been going on for some time. So it is happening. The review is happening, and as far as I'm concerned, we need to move forward with a review, but only when we've got the right information to do it. And I'll leave it at that, Chair.
Councillor Lloyd, are you seconding the recommendations?
I am, Chair.
I presume so from what you said, but for transparency, I needed to check that. I then am going to move to the vote. Is everyone in favour of the recommendations? I'm not seeing any dissent there, so that is then approved and moves us on to item 10. Councillor Phillips.
See, I could be talking about this for many a year, as I have been since about 2014. Right, basically, evidence base, again, that went through the local committee, and I refer yourselves to page 124 and the recommendations there. And there was good debate within the committee, and it said that 4.1, whether new evidence is required to feed into the supplementary planning documents, development plan documents, or other work the council is progressing, then an end date commensurate with able to fit in with a review of the plan be required. And it was also agreed by the local plan committee, and this is really important, that no further work on the evidence base be undertaken until the method, the standard method for calculating housing needs and other policy changes are clearer, so that work undertaken is not done prematurely and at the cost to this council. Now, the local plan committee is made up of a cross section of councillors from parties, etc., and it was agreed on that, and that further reports to the committee on the changes to the planning regime are reported back to the local committee. We can't be any clearer. We can't be any clearer, and the local plan committee is the committee that will be doing the oversight of the work. that we as a Borough Council will do. So I just want to move the recommendations, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. We do have a speaker on this, Councillor Kondaka.
Thank you, Chair. It's incredible that they keep talking about this cross-section on the local plan committee when I have not been allowed to be on that committee. Clearly, I'm the most knowledgeable person on the left in terms of all this stuff, and I've been passionately talking about this for a decade. I've been to the joint committee, and the evidence base is really, really important to get right. Looking at the paperwork itself, there's a lot of stuff in the evidence base we should be working on now. Particularly, you've got the HS2 going into the side of Birmingham, the housing plans next to the NEC. There's an awful lot of brownfield work going on in Greater Birmingham. The mayor there has got a load of money to do the brownfield site remediation work. There's an awful lot of stuff we could do on the projections before we actually do the stuff on the calculations on the back end of it. There is a piece of work to do to see what the population and the number of households and the number of people per household that we will have. So rather than just wait another year or 6 months for the government to give us a new calculating method, there is all the core work to be done on the ONS population projections, the housing population projections. We worked on 2012 data for the borough plan. Councillor Phillips talked earlier about us being based on 2014 data. Actually, our plan is based on 2012 data, and it was decided not even to update it for the 2014 data. There is an awful lot been changed in the last 8 years. There's an awful lot be changed in the next decade. We need to start getting our evidence in line, and we need to take account of all the changes that have happened over the last 8 years and the change in migration. We have left the European Union. We will have a radically different university in Coventry, at the University of Coventry and the University of Warwick. Far more will be done online. The population growth for Coventry 5 years ago was 10,000 allegedly. In 19, it dropped to 5,000. This year, the population growth for Coventry is probably 0 or negative due to COVID. And we are in a radically different place. So we do need to be getting all this work done. I agree there's things that you have to wait for government to give you a formula, but this evidence base needs to be oven ready so that we can actually set a low target, a sensible target, not one that's below what we need, but a low reasonable target so we build the right stuff. And evidence, yeah, we're just mad if we don't start the groundwork. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any points of clarification? Thank you for your comments, Councillor Kondaka. Any member wish to say anything to this? Councillor Phillips has moved the recommendations. Is that seconded? Councillor Watkins is seconding that. Councillor Lloyd, are you wanting to speak on this item, or were you indicating to second? Okay, I think you're indicating you were seconding it. I am then going to move to the vote. Any dissent from the vote? Councillor Phillips, do you want to come back?
No, Chair, I was supporting the vote, Chair.
Okay. I think that is a unanimous vote. I'm not seeing any votes against. Thank you for presenting the report, Councillor Phillips. We then move to item 11. Can I invite Councillor Glass, as Chair of the Internal Overview and Scrutiny Panel, to present the recommendation from Scrutiny?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Chair. I presume you can hear me. First thing I'd like to put on record that I was in and out of this meeting. There's had various broadband issues, and consequently, I am chair of the committee or the panel, and therefore I will accept the responsibility for arguing the reason why this recommendation is in front of the cabinet tonight. It's actually on about the customer satisfaction ratings, where you get, if you actually look at the report, and it said in October there was 0 returns. So we've got 100% satisfaction report. That's nonsense. The whole thing is nonsense. There's even in the report itself, actually says, and I'll quote, that such a level of returns is considered statistically insignificant, as no such trends can be identified at this time. And that's what you may as well have given the panel a blank paper and said this is what the actual situation is. We have got to try and get something right about what's happening with Glendale. Obviously, the system that we've got at the present moment isn't actually dealing with the problem. Therefore, we've got to look at something else. I, hand in heart, don't know anything that can actually be done, but I don't think it would stop us looking to see if we can actually do something, Chair. And consequently, I move the recommendation from the internal overview and scrutiny panel on the 11th of July of this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We do have, Councillor Evans was hoping to join us this evening, but he did call me shortly before the commencement of Cabinet to say he had submitted a statement. Can I ask, is it Philip who's going to read out Councillor Evans' statement? He's sadly unable to join us.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to do that for Councillor Evans. If you just bear with me whilst I bring it up. Councillor Evans says as follows: I am pleased that the internal overview and scrutiny panel has forwarded this recommendation on to Cabinet, and I would strongly encourage members of the Cabinet to support the proposal sitting in front of you tonight. On a personal level, I do not like the idea that if someone does not respond to a survey, then this is automatically seen as a positive response for Glendale. Indeed, I would like to make reference to the customer satisfaction levels issued by the Civic Hall, where a null response is not considered as either positive or negative. Whilst I support the recommendation on the agenda, I also think the Parks Department should do more to put these customer satisfaction levels out more widely in the public domain. For example, if the council is intent to keep publishing the In Touch magazine despite the financial climate we are facing, perhaps on page could include a survey which folds into a free post envelope. Equally, we could include a Glendale customer satisfaction survey as part of the annual council tax bills sent to residents. Perhaps the council can include some of it on the tables within the Bedworth area office. The issue is that because we're getting so few responses, we cannot accurately use the data to measure how Glendale are performing in the eyes of the public, and treating a null response as a positive satisfaction level just defeats the whole point of the survey. I trust Cabinet members will make the right decision and support the recommendation of item 11A.
Thank you. And we have one further speaker, Councillor Wilson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It was actually myself that put forward this recommendation at the overview and scrutiny panel, so I wanted to speak on it tonight. Councillor Glass, I have to say, has fairly summarised the reasoning behind why I moved the recommendation, and also highlighted, and it's in the report before you on page 128 of the Cabinet papers, the satisfaction ratings which were presented to OSP. And the October 2019 figures just highlight the absurdity of what we're discussing, as Councillor Glass has alluded to, that we've treated a satisfaction rate of 100%, but we had no responses. So that is a false positive return. That doesn't actually tell you anything, either as a scrutiny member or as a member of the Cabinet. What it's more reflective of is perhaps apathy amongst the residents towards sending in returns to the council, or apathy about the method that we're using to return things to the council. So it becomes, as the report did correctly highlight, statistically insignificant. It's kind of like, Chair, me turning around to you and saying, I'm absolutely not diabetic, but not having had a blood test or sending something in. Now, I know I'm not diabetic because I've had the blood test. I've been out and done it. I've done something as a positive step to check that. But we can't test whether our systems are right or wrong amongst the grounds maintenance if the information that we're getting is wrong or non-existent, and not having any returns at all and counting that as 100% is just balmy, because it doesn't actually help us determine whether our systems are fit for purpose or not, or the systems that we've commissioned from Glendale are fit for purpose. I mean, the report goes on again to say that we have 99.23% satisfaction in September, but only 2 responses. So I would strongly urge Cabinet to follow the recommendation, so we aren't using targets or data that is statistically insignificant, and that we actually focus our attentions on how we get some better data in for us to use. Some of the suggestions that Councillor Evans mentioned in his statement, I think, are worthy of pursuing further from the Cabinet, and perhaps for scrutiny to go back and look at. But I think the first step has to be making the decision, cutting it off from Cabinet and saying, no, we don't believe this is acceptable anymore. It doesn't tell us anything. We shouldn't use this as the yardstick by which we measure things by. So I would encourage you to support the recommendation from OSP, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any points of clarification? I'm not seeing any. Can I thank you for your comments? I'm going to kick off by saying I actually believe this is an area where overview and scrutiny has added value to our recording of statistics, and I can completely agree with the comments made by Councillor Glass in his opening statement, where he said he felt this was an inappropriate way of recording. Councillor Lloyd, you've indicated you want to come in.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, totally agree. In actual fact, in part of David's presentation to scrutiny, he said on at least 2 occasions that the system needed to be reviewed. So, yeah, scrutiny's picked up on it, but there was an intention to review this, the system anyway. And with the successful response that we had from the summer consultation on sports facilities and open space, we are looking at that and looking at a complete new system for seeking people's opinions of grounds maintenance, the grounds maintenance workings and their contract. So it is going to happen. As I said, he did say at the committee it was going to happen on at least 2 occasions that I heard, and the committee's picked up on that. So I've got no problems with supporting the recommendation. On the methods, I would rather wait and see, well, I have seen, but I'd rather wait until the report comes out on the responses that we had on the facilities and open space, because that would aim us in the right direction where we're bound to get the most responses. And let's be honest, that's what we're after. We want to improve the amount of responses we get, so we're given a true picture of what is happening across the grounds maintenance contract, and not what is just being said in one particular area, i.e. just the social media side. We have to look at all aspects. Not everybody's on social media, not everybody is on the forums, you know, so we have to look at getting a fair response across the actual spectrum, and that's what we intend to do. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, I've got no one else indicating. Can I take it that there's no dissent on this? I'm not seeing any dissent, that we accept the recommendation from the internal overview and scrutiny panel, as indeed much of this work had already was starting in any event. Councillor Glass, I'm recording that as Cabinet. I've not had any dissent, is agreeing to your committee's recommendation, and trust you will feed back to that effect in due course. Thank you very much, Councillor Glass, for bringing that report. I am going to move to item 12. Councillor Lloyd, can I ask you to mute yourself? There's some background noise coming.
Do apologise.
Item 12 then. This paper is brought before Cabinet tonight as we have become aware that the government are likely to seek changes to the way local government is formed. Although it would be wrong to second guess what is in the white paper, it would appear that two-tier local government is not central government's thinking moving forward. Let me be clear. On a personal level, I would prefer to keep the existing arrangements. However, we need to move forward in a fully informed manner in this regard. The work outlined in the report will enable us to gather evidence to better inform discussions at a later stage. It should be noted that the report clearly asks that information about a number of options be gathered to ensure the Borough Council, and very importantly, the people we represent, are both prepared and able to influence the debate moving forward. I understand that Warwickshire County Council have now publicly stated that they intend to commission a separate study looking at just one option, a single unitary based on the entire Warwickshire geography. Slightly strange from my perspective, as the report being proposed tonight includes this option. Due to the sense of urgency, the report is not subject to call-in, and the recommendations are set out clearly at section 2 of the report. I have one speaker in this regard, and that is Councillor Wilson. Councillor Wilson and then Councillor Kondaka. Sorry, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I fully appreciate the need for this to actually come as an urgent item, because this is quite a fast-paced area of work that seems to be happening from central government, and we are aware that a white paper is due out sometime in September, possibly towards the end of September. I think those are the early indications. And so I think this report is essential, together with the other Warwickshire districts and boroughs, to working out what is actually in the interests of, particularly from our perspective, the interests of the residents of Nuneaton and Bedworth. But I don't think we can rule anything out within Warwickshire until we actually have the cold, hard figures which show what actually stacks up economically and politically, and until we have the actual white paper which gives us the boundaries. Some concerns that I do have are that when this report may actually come forward, it's silent really on when we're expecting this back. I would assume sometime October, November. That may be too late for us to get on board with some of the work which central government expects of us. So that is a concern, but I think it's a concern that we have to accept because of the fast-paced nature of what is going on. But also, what concerns me from a scrutiny and overview perspective and an opposition perspective is recommendation 2.4, where it says that the leader of the council be appointed as the Borough Council's elected representative on any working group to consider this work across the county or region. Now, this is an area of work far larger than just yourself, Chair. This is an area of work which affects all 34 members of this authority. And I accept that we may not be able to have a complete say over what happens, but I would ask as a minimum, Chair, that you would consider amending the recommendation so that you would provide a report on the cabinet report that goes to full council, every council that we have, so that we can then question you and see what is happening with regards to local government reorganisation, and then we can question you on what you have done on behalf of the residents. I think that is only fair. I think that's only reasonable, particularly given that we are in no overall control territory with this council. So whilst I'm not overly happy with the recommendation 2.4, I would suggest as a friendly amendment, if you would take that forward, Chair, is to incorporate that you will undertake to provide an update at cabinet reports like you do with the West Midlands Combined Authority. But until we know what the outcome of this report is, it's very difficult to say what future model of government is best for Nuneaton and Bedworth. So I would ask you to give that some serious consideration, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any points of clarification on what Councillor Wilson has said? I'm not seeing any. Then I'll come to Councillor Kondaka. Sorry, Councillor Kondaka, I did initially not include you as a public speaker, but you did actually ask to speak. Councillor Kondaka.
Thank you very much, Chair. I haven't yet taken a decision on where I stand on this reorganisation because we don't have the evidence base. And that is why it's important to do this work and to do it with as many and as wide set of options as possible. I'm always passionate about local democracy, but understand that very small local councils do have difficulty with bigger things, and things particularly like waste. Even if we stayed as a borough council, it may make perfect sense to go into a waste authority over a large area. For other things, it makes more sense to actually be a town council for Nuneaton and a town council for Bedworth. Particularly a lot of the charity and civic work we do can actually be taken down to a local level. And it's really, really important that we get democracy working better. I would love to see proportional representation because we do have a problem with councils that are small and dominated by one party, and however we chop this up, there's going to be democratic problems. So I think we need that discussion over PR in the government's process, so we can actually get more active people and citizens involved in local government. And also I'm quite keen that we look across the A5 to Hinckley if we are forming some form of two unitary system, because all the transport stuff I want to get better, the public transport, the bus services, the cycle routes, and particularly rail services, Nuneaton, Hinckley, Rugby, Aviston, we're an A5 corridor and a Trent Valley corridor. So I know it's difficult, but thinking outside the box, if we're to start local government again on a blank map, us, Hinckley, Aviston, Rugby will be a natural sort of area to have a local authority and then have more town councils to do some of the more things like local planning. And we need to get the public buy-in on this. And one thing that this council needs to do to continue to get public support is to do better on planning. Planning really is a right gripe to people who are put on by this council, and the council.
Councillor Condacor, can I ask you to speak to the item, please?
I think planning and how that's reorganised in any system is important, and I don't think you can ignore the disgruntled public. And so a new reorganisation of council must actually look at how planning decisions are taken, and that is a key aspect for me and will be a key aspect for the public. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Condacor. I did interrupt because I thought you were going slightly off key. Are there any points of clarification of Councillor Condaka? I'm not seeing any. Can I thank you very much, Councillor Condaka, for your input? Simone, did you indicate that you needed to come in?
Just to clarify the timescales, Chair. So whilst we are still awaiting the white paper, so we don't know exactly, obviously, what it will contain and what the timescales will be. We are looking at having at least a first draft of the report available in September, ideally. So we are working to quite a tight timescale on this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any member? Councillor Phillips.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I was very concerned about 3.2 and the fact that on a personal note, I would like the status quo to continue, but in 3.2 it was suggested that the Warwickshire Association of Labour Councils be invited to join the review as well, to enable the roles and views of parish and town councils to be captured as part of the review. The scary part is, and I talk about a paragraph here, it should be, however, be noted that Warwickshire County Council have now publicly stated that it is their intention to commission a separate study looking at a Warwickshire-wide unitary as its only option, which isn't really a great start for trying to work out what is best for the area. So that really concerns me that the Tory-run county council are going to do a separate report purely on the advantages advantages of having a unitary authority. So, but other than that, Chair, yes, we need to get involved. We need to be pragmatic about this. We need to see what the white paper says, and we need to see what all the councils say about this before making any decision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just on that last point. You know, at the end of the day, all the 5 districts, including Nuneaton and Bedworth, have all clubbed together and said, yeah, we'll work together. We'll work together. And when you look at the political layout of that, it's one Labour authority and the others are all Conservative. So, you know, we are working with them. We've put politics aside in it and said that we'll look at all options. We can all have personal views. My personal view has always been not on Warwickshire County Council's boundaries. And that's been my only view. I think it's too big. But I'm open to be persuaded otherwise. And that's why I'll go along with this report, because it's looking at all options. It seems to me that Warwickshire County Council are saying, yeah, we'll participate in that, but we're doing our own. We're going to sail by and we're going to put the evidence forward that it's got to be done on our terms on Warwickshire County Council boundaries. I think that's selfish. I don't think that represents the public. I think they should have joined the club and only join the club and move forward with as a consortium and come to a conclusion, obviously, once they've seen the report in September. I didn't think that was unreasonable. I think Warwickshire County Council and Izzy Seckham are being political and are being unreasonable. I don't think the districts are being unreasonable. They are working together. We might not all want the same thing as districts, but we've buried the hatchet and said, look, we're going to have to work together. We know the white paper's coming. We're going to have to get the evidence so we can go away and each council discuss it and see how it affects local residents. I just don't believe Warwickshire County Council are interested in that. They're just interested in grabbing as many councils as they can get, and it's as simple as that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. There was a point raised by Councillor Wilson about keeping people informed of progress with this. I think Councillor Wilson, in his comments tonight, actually appreciated that this has moved at pace and it continues to do so, this particular item. I am more than willing to keep leaders informed of progress in this matter at our informal meetings that we have bi-weekly now, that was set up actually at my instigation, but I am more than happy to use that as a result to enable free flow of information in regard to this matter. That seems to me a sensible way forward, and I am more than happy to do that. We do need the evidence. We all have our own personal views, but we need to be open to listening to the evidence that comes forward before making a final decision in this regard. I therefore will move the recommendations as printed. Is that seconded? Neil is, Councillor Phillips, I think, has seconded that. Is there any dissent from that? I'm taking that then that is agreed unanimously. I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much. I then move to item 13, and I'm going to move that we do exclude the public and press under the relevant Local Government Act 1972, because it would be likely, by considering it into public, that there would be disclosure of exempt information of the descriptions specified in paragraph 3 and 5 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act. Is that seconded?
Chair, seconded.
Thank you. And is that agreed? Any dissent from that? I'm not seeing any dissent. Can I ask our IT department to cease the live streaming, please?